The night was heavy with silence, the kind that presses against the chest and makes every breath feel like a betrayal. A storm had passed only hours earlier, leaving the city streets slick with rain and shimmering under the dim glow of the street lamps. He moved through the shadows like he belonged to them, his steps soundless, his presence almost invisible. For most, it was just another night, but for him, it was the culmination of years of anger, pain, and planning. Once he had been known as the best. His name whispered in alleys, feared in the vaults of the richest banks, and admired by those who lived in the underworld of crime. He had it all: wealth, reputation, and loyalty from those who worked beside him. But loyalty, he had learned, was the first currency to collapse. They had sold him out. The people he trusted most had left him cornered, bleeding, and rotting in a cell where daylight was only a memory. The law had caught him, but it wasn't the law that destroyed him. It was betrayal. He spent years staring at those gray prison walls, carving every face, every name into the deepest part of his mind. And when the day finally came, when the gates opened and the world let him out, he wasn't free. He was bound tighter than ever, bound to revenge. The city had changed, but he hadn't. The skyline glittered brighter, and new towers rose where old ones had crumbled, yet the same undercurrent of greed pulsed through its veins. He knew where to go, who to watch, and most of all, what to take. They thought they had risen above him, that their betrayal had bought them safety and wealth, but he would strip it all away in one night. The plan was madness to anyone else. Breaking into the vault of the most secure building in the city wasn't just risky, it was suicide. But he knew their system. He had once built it with them. Every hidden route, every blind spot, every weakness left in the machinery wasn't just an opening. It was his revenge carefully threaded into steel and wires years before. He had created their security empire, and now he would burn it down from the inside. He moved with precision, his tools no louder than the whispers of the rain dripping from rooftops. A lock gave way beneath his fingers as though it remembered him, as though it welcomed him back. The cameras swept past their arcs, never once catching the shadow that slipped between their blind spots. He was a ghost in the building, but his heart pounded with something more than adrenaline. This wasn't about gold, jewels, or cash. This was about making them feel what he had felt: cornered, helpless, broken. He reached the vault, and the cold steel door stood like a mountain before him. His hands traced the grooves, recalling the nights he had spent designing its fail-safes. They had trusted him then, had admired his brilliance, never imagining that one day he would stand against it. With slow, deliberate motions, he worked the codes and triggers, disarming layers of defense as if peeling skin from bone. Every second stretched into eternity, but at last, the door gave way, groaning open like a beast reluctantly yielding. Inside, wealth gleamed beneath the dim vault lights, stacked and waiting to be taken. But he didn't touch it. He wasn't there to enrich himself. He was there to take from them what they valued most: their illusion of safety. Instead, he planted the final piece of his plan. Explosives hidden, silent timers ticking, a storm waiting to erupt. He smiled, a thin and cold expression, as he left behind not a theft but a message. Nothing they built could stand against him. By the time the building erupted in flames, he was already miles away, watching the smoke rise into the night sky. Panic spread through the city like wildfire, and his former allies, now powerful, wealthy, and complacent, watched their empire crumble in front of them. The news screamed of the heist, the destruction. The ghost thief returned from the ashes. And he sat in the shadows, unseen, savoring the silence after the chaos. For years, they had believed they buried him. But he had clawed his way back, sharper and deadlier than before. It wasn't riches he carried away from that night. It was victory. The heist of a lifetime wasn't about what he had stolen. It was about what he had taken back. His name, his power, his vengeance. And somewhere in the city, as the fire's glow faded against the horizon, he knew they finally understood the truth. A thief betrayed is a thief reborn. The rain had a way of softening the city's edges, turning the neon lights into blurred halos and cloaking the night in something almost beautiful. But for him, beauty was a forgotten luxury. He moved through the streets with the precision of someone who had rehearsed this night in his mind 1,000 times over, every step already taken in memory before it met the ground in reality. His name had once been whispered like legend in the criminal underworld. A thief so precise, so untouchable, that even the cops had begun to respect him in secret. But legends rot when the truth comes out. Years ago, during what was supposed to be the crowning jewel of his career, he had been betrayed. Not by the police, not by luck, but by his own crew. The men he trusted, the ones he called brothers. They walked away with the prize, left him bleeding in a warehouse corner, and handed his name to the authorities like a bargaining chip. The betrayal didn't just cost him his freedom. It hollowed him out, left him a shell sitting in a cell, haunted every night by the faces of those who sold him out. But prison does strange things to a man. Some break, some bend, and some sharpen like glass. He had sharpened. Every day was a plan, every sleepless night another piece of the puzzle. He didn't just dream of revenge. He built it, piece by piece, like clockwork gears aligning for the perfect strike. When the gates opened after his sentence ended, he didn't stumble into freedom. He walked out like a soldier returning to battle. Now, the battlefield was waiting. The city had grown, glittered taller, its heart pumping with greed faster than ever. And right in the center of it all was the empire his betrayers had built. They had used the fortune from that one heist to rise higher than they ever imagined. Front companies, gleaming towers, security contracts that guarded the richest vaults in the city. They had power, wealth, untouchable status. But what they didn't know was that their walls were not as strong as they believed. Not when the man who had designed them was coming back to tear them down. He began by haunting them like a shadow. He watched them from a distance. One man now fat with indulgence, another paranoid behind layers of bodyguards, the last desperate to pretend he had earned his fortune honestly. He didn't strike right away. He let them breathe, let them think they were safe. Then, little by little, he began to take away their certainty. Lights flickered in their offices when no one else was there. Their bank accounts showed mysterious withdrawals that vanished before anyone could trace them. Safe houses they thought hidden were found broken into, nothing taken but a single playing card left on the desk, a black ace. By the time he was ready, the city was already whispering again. The ghost thief. The man who had once vanished into prison shadows was back. And this time, he wasn't after money. He was after blood. The night of the heist was chosen with the precision of a surgeon. A storm rolled over the skyline, thunder drowning out the hum of the city. He slipped into the heart of their empire like a wraith, armed not with brute force, but with the knowledge of every flaw he had once sown into their design. Cameras turned too late. Locks yielded with a sigh. Motion sensors blinked uselessly as he passed. It wasn't just infiltration, it was artistry. He reached the vault, the heart of their riches, the symbol of everything they had built from betrayal. The steel door loomed, cold and impenetrable to anyone else, but to him it was a riddle he had written long ago. His fingers danced over the controls, dismantling code after code, bypassing layers that others believed unbreakable. It was like speaking to an old enemy in a language only they shared. At last, the door groaned open, and the treasure inside gleamed under dim light. Gold, cash, securities, priceless artifacts, everything that screamed power and wealth. But he didn't touch any of it. This wasn't a thief's job anymore. It was a reckoning. He pulled from his pack small charges, sleek and silent, and placed them among the stacks. Each one was a note in the symphony of destruction he had been composing for years. By the time the final timer was set, he was already on his way out, leaving behind a vault full of promises, waiting to ignite. When the first explosion tore through the building, he was standing on a rooftop blocks away, the wind carrying smoke and fire into the stormy sky. Sirens wailed, panic rippled through the city, and his former allies watched the empire they had stolen from him collapse into rubble. Their wealth burned. Their security was shattered. And with it, their illusion of safety crumbled forever. He didn't laugh. He didn't cheer. He only watched in silence, his face lit by the fire he had set in motion. To the world, it was the heist of a lifetime, a ghost thief returned to reclaim his legend. But to him, it was something far greater. It was justice, written in flame and steel. The police searched, the news screamed, his enemies trembled. But he was already gone, vanishing into the storm as if he had never existed. What he carried away that night wasn't money. It was victory. It was vengeance. It was the return of a man they thought they had buried. And in the darkness of the city, whispers began again. The thief had returned, not for fortune, not for glory, but to remind the world that betrayal has a price, and some debts are collected in fire.